Hello and welcome to the Gifted Podcast. I am your host, Niraj Mulani, and in the Gifted Podcast, I speak with elite athletes as we try to challenge the misconception that athletes are just some people who are talented or gifted with special abilities at birth. Every week, I am joined by an elite athlete as we try to break down what it truly takes and means to be an athlete. If you're an aspiring athlete or just a casual sports fan, you will definitely enjoy this podcast as I get candid with athletes about their journey, their achievements, moments of heartbreak, and most importantly, moments of hard work and perseverance. Guys, I'm happy to share that the Gifted podcast is now sponsored by Zenkai Sports, the new disruptor in the performance apparel world. And they have come up with a great offer for the listeners of this podcast. So, stick around till the end and find out about this exciting offer. In today's episode, I welcome Ajax Amsterdam's goalkeeper, Nick Hengelman. Nick has had a very interesting career that has seen him play across multiple divisions in Netherlands, as well as a stint with Ajax's sister club, Ajax Cape Town. We discuss Nick's journey to turning pro despite starting relatively late. Nick also candidly sheds light on what kind of a perspective you need to have to be in the reserves or on the bench at a big club and still continue to approach the game with the right kind of a mindset, always bringing your best to the training ground and being patient for your chance to play. So, let's jump straight in. Welcome, Nick, to the Gifted Podcast. We're really excited to have you today and have some representation from Netherlands, the most successful club. How are you doing?
First of all, thank you for having me. And I'm doing quite okay. It's nice weather here, over here in Holland, so no problems with that. But yeah, as I say, I'm happy to be in your show and let's make it a good podcast.
Perfect. And that's what we intend to do. I'd love to start you off on the question of what does being talented or being gifted mean to you? And what kind of importance would you put on that versus hard work?
Yeah, there's always a saying, and I think especially in Ajax as well, hard work beats talent every day of the week. So you can be as talented as you are, but if you don't work hard, the talent is useless. So of course you need to have some talents to succeed during career, because if you don't have any talents at all, it's hard to get there at the level you want to be. So of course, all at least we want to go into pros or something, they need to have at least a bit of talent. But that's not the most important part. The most important part is that you to work hard with it and use your talents, which obviously you have, because otherwise the pro clubs won't see anything in you. So you need to have a bit of talent to succeed in the pro life.
Right. And you mentioned at the pro level, the talent is sort of given while the degree may vary, but a lot of the people are talented, but it is the hard work that would set you apart. And I know that you would have used that to get into the academy at FC20, which is where you are from. And what sort of aspirations did you have at the time when you joined FC20 as a teenager?
Yeah, normally back in the days when I started playing football, all the talents started at the pro club at the age of like 10, 12, between that. So I was quite a late guy coming into the pro club. I think I was 16, but I never give up on the dream of becoming a pro player. So I only played at the amateurs until the age of 16. From when I started playing as a footballer, I think it was 4 or 5 years old. I only had one dream, and it was becoming a pro player. So maybe one gift I can give myself is that I knew on a quite a young age what I wanted to do and what I wanted to become. So I started with that at the age of 4 or 5, and all the way till 16. I managed to get at the pro club. So I think that's also a good talent to have, that you know where you want to go. And if you know what you want to do, and if you know where you want to go, you have to put in the work, and you know by yourself what you have to do to achieve it, because it's also one thing about having talent, and it's, yeah, use it.
Right. And, like you mentioned, you got into the pro football relatively later at 16. What sort of self belief is required on your behalf to continue chasing your dream, no matter how late you have started in the pro football?
I think you need a really good self-belief, because if you got a plan A or a plan B, plan C, plan D, and you don't know which plan you want to go or which plan you really want to achieve, your focus is lost, because that's the part of self-belief as well. If you really believe you can do something, in the end you can do it, because that's what you believe. And this, I don't know what kind of strange thing is there is in the air, because all the other players who talked to me during my career with a real hard sense of self-belief, they all made it what they wanted to achieve in their career. And even some players where I thought of like, oh, maybe that's a bit too high of a achievement you want to achieve, but still that guy really believed it, and in the end he achieved what he wanted to achieve. So I think in the end, self-belief is one of the most important things to have as an athlete.
And what sort of questions would you ask yourself, or what sort of interactions would you need to have with yourself to arrive at the realization or the awareness that no matter how late you have started, you need to chase this down as the only goal of your life?
It's where you want to be in like 10 years or in 15 years. And of course, athletes don't have like 60 years, because you can't plan for 60 years, because then your body says you can't do it anymore. But in the beginning, you have to set yourself some goals, and you need to set the highest possible goals, because if you set low goals for yourself, in the end, you won't achieve the bigger one. So for me, you can put the goals as high as possible, but you always have to have some small steps as well toward the goals you want to achieve. So yeah, put some small ones in between, but also keep the big ones in the back of your mind as well.
And would you say that you had somebody you looked up to while growing up to give you that sense of clarity in terms of where you want to be? Would you say that you had a football idol or any other idol in any other sport?
Of course, you always look to the big ones and the big athletes over there. So in my time, when I grew up as a young boy, I was really a fan of FC Twente. There was a goalkeeper in goal, Sander Boske. And that is maybe a kind of a funny story as well, because one of my first times when I played at FC Twente, and for the first time I came at first team playing ground, I entered the pitch with him. So I always looked up at him when I was a young boy. At the moment when I stood beside him on the same pitch at the same club and working with him together, was like, okay, I really did what I wanted to do as a young boy. So that was like a nice achievement for me. But of course, you always got the bigger ones, as like Van der Sar or something, the biggest goalkeeper Holland ever had. But in the end, it's, of course, you really want to have the same career as he has, but you have to understand that it's not possible to have the exact same career as he had. That is really difficult to do. But you always consider it in your mind that you want to have the same path and career as the big goalkeepers back in the time you were a young boy had. You look up to them, and yeah, you try to achieve the same.
Right. And like you mentioned, while you would always want to look up to them to have sort of a guidance of where your career would want to move, but at the end of the day, you are on your own journey and you need to define your own path. So it's great to have somebody light up the road for you, but you still have to make that journey yourself, eh?
To do everything by yourself, and I think that's life as well. But especially as a football player, it's like it's, I won't say it's a lonely journey, but it's your own journey. And like you see thousands of people coming during your journey, but in the end, you're the only one who can decide for your own journey and how that path is going. Because all the decisions you make them yourself, and every decision you make yourself involves a different path of your career. So if you have a different kind of options in a situations, they're always the path lead to one and another. So it's always the choices you make are the ones that create your own path in your own career. So that's also difficult, but in the end, it's your own journey.
Yeah. And one such choice that you ended up making was after 3 years with FC Twente at the under 21 level, you ended up moving to their bitter rivals in Heracles Almedo. How did that move come about for you? And how did that move go down with your ex teammates at FC Twente and the rest of the folks at the academy?
It's just what I just said. If at the end of all things, you have a few options which lead to different direction. And I always tell those young boys nowadays that you have to be patient and be as patient as possible, because if you are at a good club and people like you and they want to extend your contract and all that stuff, and you really in a good spot. Be patient and wait for the opportunities. But back in the days, I was young. First of all, I was young and I was really motivated. And I thought by myself, I was better than I thought than I was because I can't find the proper English word at the moment. But I wanted to play and I wanted to do it now. I wanted to hurry the process up. And yeah, that was maybe a stupid mistake for me. So at the end of my career, I would say the best choice for me was to extend my contract back in the day. But I chose to leave the club and to move to another club where I thought, in my opinion, were better possibilities to play in the first team. But as I said, I needed to be more patient because when I left the club, there were a few other goalies that made the debut. In football, always things happening with like goalkeepers get injured or suspensions or like you don't know what's going to happen. So I always advise those young boys, be patient. If you're in a good club, be patient and your time will come.
And it's interesting that you're admitting that you overestimated the skills that you had at that time. What sort of mindset do you need to have in that time to have that realization almost that, okay, this is where I am overestimating my skills, or this is where I am underestimating my skills, and I really need to align it with what truly is? And who do you depend on to give you that right kind of, so to say, a mirror to your skills?
First of all, I don't think it's a bad thing to have a good view about yourself, or maybe an even better view about yourself than it's in real life, because the positive thoughts always lead to good things as well. So I don't think it's a bad
Absolutely.
thing. But on the other hand, I think it's good to have patience and know where you are. Like if you're at a good club and you're young, you have talent, then like all the people in the club want to help you achieve to make your debut at that club. And if you're impatient, maybe the word what I was trying to look earlier was like impatience, and I was impatient at the time. And I think you have to sit down, look in the mirror, as what you said, and ask yourself a few things like, am I at the club where I want to be? Why am I not playing at the moment? Are there things that I can do to change it? But if the club still have confidence in me, and if that all answers and we can answer with yes, I think it's always good to be patient and let those guys who are experienced help you with that, because I also noticed that if the club really likes you and they want to go on with you in the end, if you put the work in and you have the right attitude, it will come. So that's what I always say to the young boys: be patient. And what I said, don't think low about yourself. That's not a good thing, but be patient.
Yeah. And, after being with Heracles for 2 years, you decided to join Aguf Appleton. And within 6 months of joining there, the club was declared bankrupt. And juxtaposing that to, like you mentioned, that the players need to be patient in times like these, how do you stay patient, or how do you deal with that uncertainty that football often throws at you?
Heracles, I moved to a second division lower, the second division, and that was the choice I made was to play games actually, because I got the opportunity to play in the first team, to play matches, and I always think it's a good thing to play matches because especially as a goalkeeper, you need to have some hours in and
Yeah.
make as minutes as you can. But I was also a few years old. I think I made my debut in my 21st year. So, and as a goalkeeper, 21 is still a very young age. I didn't make the choice to extend my contract at FC Twente. And at the end, I left Heracles. That was like a choice for me to really start playing games. And I think that was a good choice. And in the end, the club went bankrupt. And those things, you have no control about that. So you must keep your mind away from that, because the mind can't handle things. Let me say, you don't have to think about things you can't control. So
Yeah.
you only have to keep your mind to those things you have control about. So yeah, the club went bankrupt, and that didn't make me any uncertain or something. But it was like a real shitty moment actually for me as an athlete, but also for the club.
And we often hear athletes talk about we try and not focus on things that we can't have control over. And it's easier said than done. I totally understand that. But how do you navigate that time, and how do you ensure that you continue focusing on the performance, because that is the only thing that is under your control at that time?
What I said, that you only have to focus about things you have control about. So the only control I had was my own body and all stuff. So in the meantime, we just kept on training, and I got some offers from other clubs because when the club went bankrupt, yeah, you're just unemployed within a day because the club doesn't exist anymore. So you need to find yourself a new club. And yeah, I moved to Vitesse, and that was just for the cover up because it was the winter break and a few months left. So it was a bit of a situation you won't see that much often. So you don't have a lot of people with experience about that who can advise you. So yeah, you have to make choices, and I made the choice to go to Vitesse. But in the end, I don't know if it was a good one or not. But I made that one. It was nice to be there because it was kind of good club at the moment. Still is.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you touch upon being advised by the right kind of group in moments like these. What kind of importance would you put on having a great support team around you? Because we know that there's often this saying that it takes a village to raise a child. We also know that it takes a village to raise an athlete, because there are a lot of people supporting that one athlete's ambition. So what sort of value would you put on that, and how much do you rely on that in your own journey?
Of course, you always have to have a few people around you who can advise you. And I really think that like all the players, all the guys with experience are really useful to talk to because they have seen a lot, they know a lot, they know how the world works within their own, how you say, a bit work. I'll let us say work because in the end it's work, but it's still a hobby. But they have a full experience in the things they do. So, like if you got all the players, and I know, of course, the world changes, the football changes, but still it's hard to be in the business for more than 10 years, more than 15 years. So if there are players around you who have experienced more than 10, 15 years at pro level, it's good for you to ask for advice because those guys know the tough side, the rough side, the bad side, the good side. And you can ask them advice, and for sure those guys will tell you how things work and what maybe is at the end the best choice for you. And of course you always have to make your own choice, but it's always good to ask the older players and those coaches as well, because yeah, you need coaches to develop in your career, and those coaches are there for you as well at times, and of course they are there for themselves as well, but at the end they also want to improve you so they can have better play for themselves as well. And you have good friends around you, your mom and dad and all that stuff, but there's also sometimes a disability because they don't know always how things work at pro level, and then they can give you another advice, then it's good for you because of course those guys and especially your mom and dad, they really want the best for you, and sometimes they don't know, but they go on to a certain kind of bet with which they think is the best, and in the end is maybe not. So there's maybe a difficulty, but I would say if you really want advice, ask those older players for advice because they really need how the world works within that specific area.
Right. And I'm presuming that one of those advices would have been weighed when you decided to move from Vitesse to Achilles 29, which is in the fifth tier of Dutch football. What made you choose Achilles at that time, and what sort of goals did you set for yourself prior to that move?
I left Heracles to AGOVV in Apeldoorn, and I left the club because I wanted to play matches, and I started playing matches, but all of a sudden the club went bankrupt. But after that, it's like a kind of addiction because if you play games, it's an addiction. You want to play more games because it's such an amazing feeling. And when the club went bankrupt, I went to Vitesse, but I was a substitute over there because I didn't play any matches. So when the season was over, I really wanted to go to a club where I could play. I had a few options. I went to England, but I didn't succeed over there. And then I went back to Holland and had a week with another club, but it didn't work out. So, and then Achilles 29 came on my pad. They told me, I want you as my goalkeeper. You're going to play all the matches. And I was kind of like focused on playing. And that's where my choice led me to because I wanted to play games. And that club came to me and told me, you're going to play the matches. And I had a single vision is, I think, the proper word for that. And I had single vision. That's why I made my choice to go to Achilles.
And knowing that goalkeeping is such a unique position on the field that you could be looking outside in for much of the game if your team is playing possession based football, but you could be required to turn up in that instantaneous moment and produce that save. How do you ensure that you are concentrating for the full 90 minutes, knowing all the difficulties that belie that position?
I do think goalkeepers have one of the most important jobs in the field because we can afford any mistake. Any mistake we make is a goal for the opponent. So we have to maintain our focus for the full 90 minutes. That's also why I think goalkeepers are kind of tired after the game because they need to have those 90-minute focus. But there are like some tricks to have because if you keep talking to your defense, you keep your mind in the game because you don't allow yourself to think about other things. And of course, sometimes during the games your mind goes away, and I won't say it's a bad thing because if your team is attacking and your rest defense is good, you can have a little bit off, but as soon as things go on, you must have like an instant twitch that you can go back into the 100% focus. But little tricks is keep talking to your defense or something are the good things to be in the game, stay in the game.
Right. Now, having made it to the fifth tier, you made your jump back to tier two within a year itself with FCOS and played with them for 2 years. And after that, life came back full circle when you joined FC20 again. And you were 26 and 27 at that time. And we know goalkeepers' peaks last longer than outfield players. What sort of goals were you setting for yourself when you moved again back to FC20?
Yeah, Twente is my club I support, and I'm really, I would say, I call myself a fan as well. And Twente is such a big club in Holland, and I had the chance to go back, and I knew I wasn't going to play any games, but in the end, I was going into every training like to become better and wait for that opportunity to come when there are injuries or when there are suspensions. But unfortunately, there weren't any during those 3 years. So there was a bit of unlucky for me. But yeah, I moved to them to have that small chance of what I was hoping for some suspensions or something that I had my chance over there. But unfortunately, they didn't come. And yeah, that was unlucky for me. But in the end, it was, of course, again, a nice experience to play at my home team and move on from there because I think I made a nice move from there too.
Yeah. And we know that the Cape Town year was a roller coaster year to say the least. But before we get there, I was keen to understand what are the nitty gritties involved in the selection of the goalkeepers. Like you mentioned that you were sort of waiting for some form of suspension or injuries to possibly move you up the order. Wh- what are the nitty gritties of the training performance itself? How would the coach judge those training times between the coaches, and what needs to change for, say, a first goalkeeper to come down to the third, to fall down the pecking order without actually ever making, say, big blunders in the game?
Yeah, I think goalkeepers is hard as well because you only have one spot and coaches hardly change them because wherever I go, there's always a first goal keeper, first choice, and if that guy doesn't do any strange things during the games, yeah, he can do whatever he wants on the training pitch because yeah, the games are the most important day in the week, and if that guy does a proper job on the game days, yeah, it doesn't really mind what the guy does in training, but still yeah, there are things you don't have any control about because his performance are not your performance, and what
Yeah.
that guy does, you don't have any control about him. So the only thing you have control about is yourself. So you must go into every day to become better because when there is a situation, because in football things can change really fast within a blink of an eye. Something happens, and yeah, you have to play the game. Look at Stekelenburg right at the moment at the club where I play. So all of a sudden, Onana get a suspension from 1 year, and that guy plays a few matches in Ajax Amsterdam, and now he's playing at the European Championship. So yeah, it's in a blink of an eye, the whole world can look different. So you must go into every training. It's if you want to get a better goalkeeper or a player, doesn't matter what you are, and you must get yourself ready for the moment if it comes.
Yeah. And while we do see goalkeepers training together on various aspects, and you also mentioned that you would approach each training to improve on your individual attributes. What sort of individual training would you do to, make sure that you are continuously improving as a player and ensuring that you're putting pressure on the first and the second goalkeeper?
Yeah, you start the morning in the gym, do your pre-app, do your prepping. I think it's called pre-app, but yeah, you start activate yourself in the gym. You go into the pitch, give your best, even give your best to your teammates, to your colleague goalkeepers, because if you can make them better, for sure they try to help you make yourself better as a goalkeeper. And that's what I say. If they help you to become a better goalkeeper, all of a sudden something happens with them, and you need to be ready. So you need each other in that. So that's why I never did anything bad regard my colleague goalkeepers, because I think you all need each other in that, despite if you're the first, second, or third goalie. After the trainings, you can have some time for yourself, but in the end, some rest is also good. So you must have a good lifestyle, and you must take care of your body and just be good. And you can't give more than 100%. So if you overtrain yourself, it's not working either. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's very heartening to hear the right kind of competitive spirit. So because we know that it is two or three people are competing for that one spot, but at the end of the day, it is the team's objectives that everybody's driven towards.
I've met some colleagues who couldn't really live with the fact that they were rivals. The guys saw me as a rival, or other colleagues as a rival, and I didn't like the attitude, because it doesn't bring you any further than that. I think if you help each other, you can reach far more, because it's what I said. It's just in a blink of an eye that the whole world can change.
Yeah, that's very very insightful to hear, and that perspective of the pure form of competition, but then still being driven by the team's goals. And like you had mentioned that you were ensuring that you continue to improve as a player through those years at FC20 and ended up getting a great move to Ajax Cape Town all the way to South Africa. Talk me through that move. How did that come about, and what sort of cultural similarities and, more importantly, cultural differences did you see between competing in Netherlands versus South Africa?
Yeah, my contract ended at FC20, and my former coach, Andries Uldering, was the head coach of Ajax Cape Town, and he just extended his contract, and I congratulated him with that. And I said, if you need a goalkeeper, I'm there for you. And actually, he really wanted to get me over there, so it didn't took long for me to decide to go to Cape Town, because I really think he's a good coach, one of the best I had during my career. And when I came there, this was just because Ajax Cape Town is part of Ajax Amsterdam, and it's like the whole Dutch culture is what they were trying to bring in South Africa. So the club where I played for was kind of a bit of a Dutch thing, and they all got a youth development plan, which is quite ordinary in South Africa, I think. And the feeling for me as a Dutch guy was kind of the same over there, because all the things we did in Holland, we did it at Ajax Cape Town as well. But obviously, the culture thing over there is so big, because you got really rich, you get poor, you got so much difference over here as in Holland, because in Holland you don't see that poorness, how you say, like with the wealth and stuff, because you got there like real big difference.
Yeah. And what was the difference in the fan culture?
The big difference was that in Holland you got clubs like Ajax, Feyenoord, the really rivalry clubs. And when you go to a home game, for instance, if you go to a home game of FC20, you got like 95% support the home team. Like if you go to Ajax, like 95% is for the home team, because there are only seats the home club sells, tickets to their own fan base. But over there, if you go to the big games, like you go to Orlando Pirates against Chiefs, the whole stadium can be filled with every people from every club, because they just go to the stadium to watch football and enjoy themselves, sing, dance. It's just, you even see shirts from Arsenal or Man United, or like it doesn't matter. Every club can sit together over there and just dance and sing and have fun.
Right. And, your 1 year at Ajax Cape Town was nothing short of a roller coaster. And with your team fighting for promotion for the first year, to the head coach and head of football resigning midway, and then Ajax deciding to discontinue their partnership with the club, and you guys losing the promotion title to Swallows FC in the last day of the season. Talk me through that 1 year in South Africa, and how do you personally make sense of it all?
Yeah, still, if we start talking about it, hurts a bit because we just lost on one goal. We lost the championship on one goal, so that still hurts a bit. But it was a real roller coaster because, as you said, the technical director and head coach, we were like part of Ajax Amsterdam, quitted, and Amsterdam wanted to quit the cooperation with the Ajax Cape Town. So from that point, it all started going a bit worse because, and of course, Corona kicked in. All the guys couldn't train because the COVID. I think the rules we had from the government were really strict. It's not comparable to what we have in Holland because we couldn't leave our houses anymore. You weren't allowed to leave the front door, so you needed to be in the house for 24/7. So no guy could train anymore. So it was a tough time. But from the point where the coach left till the end of the competition, where we needed to go in a bubble, was like hectic. And yeah, maybe we can write a book about it because it's so much and it hurts. It still hurts that we couldn't achieve the best possible thing is becoming champions. So that it's a bit of a pity.
Yeah. The head of football and the head of technical director at that time quit in February, which is still midway, and you had a title to fight for. How do you ensure, and this is knowing that those are the two folks that got you to Ajax Cape Town, how do you ensure that things like these, the admin decisions, don't affect your performances?
You don't have control about the things that happening with the technical director and the coach. Of course, it's a pity, and I told the chairman as well that I really thought it was a loss that he let the head coach go. But we had the goalkeeper coach became the head coach, and the assistant still remain assistant. And I must say they really did a good job. But of course, if you have a good coach like Uldering was, it's hard to do the same. And there was also a bit of a Dutch thing Coach Uldering put in the team because if you have an African culture as football is, it's more lazy than we got over there in Holland. So all the things were like started like going a bit down, 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 down. It's not going in fasting, but you see it going down a bit slowly. And in the end, it was just not enough. And I really believe if he still was in charge, we would have made the championship. But it's a loss that he left, and that's also. But that's part of football, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you'd mentioned, this 1 year, which already was a roller coaster year for you, what would further get complicated by Corona. And then during that time, also, you decided to come back to Europe. But the season in South Africa ended 4 to 5 weeks after the season in Europe had already kicked off. So we obviously know that clubs would have the goalkeepers decided before they jump into the competition. So how did that move to Ajax come about?
In Africa, they decided to finish the league with a bio bubble. So they put every club in a hotel and just play matches within the bubble. And I really wanted to end the league over there. I could decide myself as well if I wanted to go to Holland or to finish the season. The club really let me choose my own choice. But I decided to end the season over there. And yeah, of course, the season ended quite late. And I just came back to Amsterdam at the end of September, I guess. And then I asked Ajax Amsterdam if they had like a spot open for me to keep myself fit and have a good conditions for me to when I joined to another club. But instead of allowing me, they offered me a contract to play for them. And that was like one of the biggest club in Holland, maybe even in Europe, because they do very well in Europe. It was not a hard choice for me because I could work at the highest level. And it was nice for me to experience. And that's it just come quick because I only was back in Holland, and 1 week later I could sign a contract in Amsterdam. But of course,
And
it's hard when you come back and all other clubs are full with goalkeepers, and all the money went left because they give the money to the first, second, and third goalies.
yeah. And how has that year been for you with Ajax so far?
It was a good season. It was a great season, actually. The first team managed to get the champions of Holland. They managed to get the cup in Holland. Unfortunately, we couldn't go any further in Europe as what we really wanted to. But yeah, I had a really nice experience because I could work in one of the best kitchens of Europe. It was from such a high level, maybe the highest level I ever experienced during my career. It really, especially when I trained with the first team, it was such a high level that I really enjoyed it as well. And I was in the possibility to train with the youngest talents and maybe the best talents of Holland. It was also a nice experience for me because it's nice to work with young guys and to give them a little bit of advice. I didn't try to teach them how to play football, but as what I said earlier, I try to tell them to have patience and to stay mentally on the right path and to make good choice and don't be impatient. I was back during the days.
Yeah. And it's always interesting to hear the athletes talk about the club goals or the club's targets for the year. And I would always take them back to understanding between the club's larger goals, how do you try and have your own personal goals to ensure that you are improving?
I knew there needed to be a few miracles for me to play at Ajax Amsterdam to play matches because I was too old. My age was too old to play in the young team of Ajax because they are only allowed to play when you're under 23 or something. Yeah, I'm 31 at the moment. So the only goal of the only chance for me to play is in the first team, and you got players as Onana over there, Stekelenburg, Kortarski, Scherpen, and I just told some newspapers as well as if I want to play for Ajax Amsterdam, some really miracles needed to happen. So in the end, there was almost a chance for me to be in the selection, but as Onana got a big suspension, and we had a few injuries over there. But still, the goals I set myself is to improve, to see and learn, and to adapt everything that happens within a big club as Ajax is, and to learn and to improve myself as a person, to improve myself as a goalkeeper. Because I think even if you don't play games, but you train on a very high level, you still get to be a better goalkeeper at the end. So I also had the opportunity to find some new things for myself, like for like some power training, as for instance, because if you're a first goalkeeper, the power trainings are sometimes a bit. Be careful what you're gonna do because the game day is the most important day of the week. So you work towards that. But I didn't have any games, so I could maybe overtrain myself some days and even on a day before the game because I didn't have any games. And yeah, I could improve myself physically more during that day, year. So that's what I did. And yeah, those small goals I set myself in the beginning of the season with Ajax Amsterdam to be a better goalkeeper when I leave Ajax and go to another club.
Right. And your contract with Ajax is coming to an end in a couple of weeks while you and your agent work hard to finalize your next club. What sort of mental strength is required to ride out the uncertain period like this and continue to focus on the process and let the outcome work itself out?
Yeah, as what I said earlier as well, you have to have a real self belief and be positive because nowadays there's always people coming to you. What you're gonna do if you won't find any clubs? But that single sentence or the single question I get like all the years I'm playing football, they always ask me that question. And I always give them a bit of a bad question back about their own jobs. But uh, you have to let that go on because you can't do anything about those questions and they will come and you need to know that those questions will come, but you need to stay positive. What I say, if you're positive things will happen, and you need to have much of a self-belief as well, and just make yourself a program to be fit, stay fit, and just keep yourself to the program because that's also a thing. What I think, if you do that, you have like a plan, and if you just keep on working on that plan, a nice club will come at the end.
Yeah. And I think that's quality advice for a lot of the aspiring footballers in our listener base. And while you continue to chart out your next move, what would you say has been, or who would you say has been the most influential coach for you? And what has been their most profound tip or suggestion to you to improve your abilities?
It's hard to say what coach you really the best one, because every coach, they give you pieces of advice, and they try to learn you anything. Because even if you think by yourself it's a bad coach, it's still a coach who learned you something, because that's maybe a thing you wouldn't do yourself, or like you can keep in mind, that's not a good thing I really wanted to do. So like even if it's a bad coach, it's still something you can learn from it. So every coach has something that helps you during your career. And yeah, it's also the thing, this question before, is that you always, when you're in periods like this, you have to put in the work. You still have to put in the work, and it's sometimes hard, because for example, this morning I was in the gym at 9 o'clock, nobody there, did some exercises I really hate. So, but in the end, you need to do to put in the work. And it's also, I went to a little field, amateur field, and I put in the meters. And yeah, when you come there, you think by yourself, oh, it's not going to be fun, but still you need to do the job and work on that.
Yeah. And while I know that you try and not have any plan B in terms of your football career, and you really like focusing on that one specific challenge that you are putting for yourself, I was also keen to understand what sort of aspirations do you have outside of football, or if you have any plans once you have decided to hang up your gloves.
Yeah, that's kind of the things I won't think about it at the moment, because you got also a lot of people asking you that question, and what are you gonna do when you quit? What are you gonna do when you do this? But that are all things for later. And if you put your mind to it, and if you keep your thoughts to that, your focus slips a bit of the thing you want to achieve. But still, because I still want to play football, and I still got some plans for myself, yeah, I need to have real focus on that. And if I lose my focus a bit of that, yeah, it's getting harder to achieve those goals. So I won't think about what will happen when I quit football, because of course it's gonna happen someday, sooner or later, that I quit football. But yeah, for me, and of course the self belief I have, think it's hard for me to quit football, because in the end, it will come all right. I don't think there's something bad gonna happen when I quit, but for now, I won't think about it too much.
Yeah, that's a very interesting and refreshing take on life outside football. We really wish you the very best for your next move, and we hope that you enjoy the Euros that lie ahead of us, and hopefully Netherlands gets to win.
Yeah, I hope too. They have now 2 wins in a row, so I hope we can maintain a streak and become European Championship
Perfect.
winners.
So thank you so much for taking out the time today, Nick. It's been a real pleasure having you on the podcast today.
No problem. Thank you as well. It was a pleasure to meet you. I hope you do good with the podcast.
Thank you so much. Well, I found the kind of perspective Nick has about football very refreshing and inspiring. I loved the all in approach he has and not worried about the plan B or C. It sure brings a certain kind of clarity and focus. And I certainly value his suggestion to aspiring athletes to be patient with their chances if they are at the right club and continue focusing on their performances and not worry about the things that they can't control. As promised, here's more about our partnership with Zenkai Sports, the new disruptor in the performance apparel world. Zenkai utilizes a brand new technology that repels liquids, keeping you cooler during intense activity as the sweat evaporates naturally off your skin. This allows you to regulate body temperature easily and push yourself harder as Zenkai clothing harnesses the power of your sweat. Sweat is our friend, keep it on you. Zenkai Sports is also the only performance apparel company which is cotton based. All of their gear is over 65% cotton, with some pieces over 95%. Cotton is biodegradable, feels great against your skin, and is much better for our environment than synthetic based apparel. Please go to www.zenkaisports.com to check out their cool range of products that can give you that extra boost in your performance. And while you are at it, use the code TGP20 for a 20% discount off your entire order. You can also find all these details in our show notes of this episode, so don't forget to check it out. So that's it for this episode, folks. Thank you for tuning into the Gifted Podcast. I have been your host, Niraj Mulani. A gentle reminder, you can find us as The Gifted on your favorite podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, and Google. Keep following us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube as The Gifted Podcast and on Twitter as The Gifted Pod so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Thank you once again for listening, and I'll see you next week with another special episode. Until then, stay well and keep your masks on.